What if the deepest wound from childhood was not something that happened to you, but something that never happened at all? No screaming, no visible abuse, no dramatic memory that explains everything. And yet, somewhere inside, something always felt missing. You learned to survive instead of rest, to perform instead of feel, to become strong before you were ever allowed to feel safe. And now, even as an adult, you may carry a strange emptiness you cannot fully explain, a loneliness that follows you into relationships, into silence, into success, into love itself. Because some children are not damaged by violence, they are shaped by emotional absence. And the most painful part is this: when love is missing quietly, the child often grows up believing the problem was them.
Before we begin, if this video speaks to something you felt but could never quite explain, take a second to like this video. It helps more people who are silently struggling find it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss videos like this that put words to what's been hard to understand. And if you know someone who might need to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes one video can say what we've never been able to.
Not every unloved child grows up in chaos. Some grow up in homes that appear completely normal from the outside. There is food on the table, clothes are washed, birthdays are celebrated, family photos exist. Nothing looks alarming enough for the world to notice. But beneath the surface, something essential is missing. Not always care, not always provision, warmth. A child reaches for comfort, excitement, sadness, fear, and receives distraction, impatience, emotional distance, or silence. Slowly, they begin to understand that certain emotions are unwelcome. Joy becomes too much. Sadness becomes inconvenient. Need becomes embarrassing. So the child adapts. They become careful, observant, quiet. They learn to study facial expressions, footsteps, tones of voice. They learn how to disappear emotionally before they can be rejected emotionally. And because children naturally protect their caregivers in their minds, they rarely think love is missing. Instead, they think, something must be wrong with me. That belief becomes the invisible foundation of their identity. Years later, they may struggle to explain why they feel empty or disconnected, because nothing dramatic seems to have happened. There is no single traumatic moment, only thousands of small moments where emotional connection never arrived. But the body remembers. It remembers what it felt like to need comfort and not receive it, to feel alone in the presence of others, to grow up emotionally untouched. And that silent absence becomes the beginning of the wound.
Emotional neglect rarely begins in a single generation. Parents who struggled to give love were often children who never received it themselves. The emotionally distant parent may have once learned that vulnerability was unsafe. The parent who avoids emotion may have grown up in survival mode, where feelings were treated as weakness. This does not erase the harm, but it explains how these patterns continue. Sometimes caregivers are emotionally immature. They value obedience more than connection. The child becomes less of a person and more of a role. The easy child, the successful child, the quiet child, the responsible child. Sometimes parents are overwhelmed by depression, stress, trauma, addiction, illness, or financial pressure. The child's emotional world becomes invisible because the adults themselves are drowning internally. And sometimes there is love in intention, but not in emotional expression. A parent may believe sacrifice alone equals life, that providing food, shelter, and discipline should be enough. But children do not learn love through intention. They learn love through emotional experience, through being comforted, welcomed, seen, held safely in moments of fear. Without those experiences, a child can grow up physically cared for while emotionally starving. Over time, emotional distance becomes normalized inside the family. Affection feels awkward.
A child's nervous system is built through relationships. Long before they can explain abandonment with words, their body is already learning lessons about love. Is closeness safe? Will comfort come? Can emotions be expressed freely? Will someone stay present when pain appears? These experiences form attachment patterns that often follow people into adulthood. Some become anxious, desperately seeking reassurance because love feels unstable. They fear abandonment constantly and feel terrified of being too much. Others become avoidant. They stop needing people altogether because dependence once led to disappointment. And many people carry both patterns at once, longing for intimacy while fearing it at the exact same time. This is not weakness, it is adaptation. Emotional neglect also shapes self-worth. Children understand themselves through reflection. If their emotions are ignored, they may begin to feel invisible. If affection only appears when they perform or succeed, they learn that love must be earned. So, adulthood becomes a lifelong attempt to prove worthiness. How useful must I be? How successful? How easy to love? Even the nervous system adapts to emotional scarcity. Calm can feel unfamiliar. Genuine tenderness may feel suspicious. Healthy love may feel uncomfortable, simply because chaos once felt more familiar than safety. The mind does not merely remember childhood, it organizes around it.
The unloved child often grows into a highly functional adult. They become independent, responsible, capable, helpful. But beneath that competence is usually exhaustion. Love still does not feel secure. So adulthood becomes a collection of survival strategies. Some people chase achievement, hoping success will finally make them lovable. Others become caretakers, trying to earn connection through usefulness. Some avoid closeness entirely, convincing themselves they do not need anyone. But underneath these behaviors is the same hidden fear. If people truly see me, they may leave. This creates an exhausting inner conflict. One part longs to rest in love. Another part distrusts love completely. So even healthy relationships can feel confusing. Kindness may trigger suspicion. Stability may feel emotionally unfamiliar. Compliments may fail to land emotionally. The unloved often mistake familiar pain for genuine connection because rejection feels recognizable. They may stay in one-sided relationships, push away healthy people, or sabotage intimacy before it becomes emotionally dangerous. There is also hidden anger beneath all this. The anger of having needs and learning to silence them. The anger of being praised for resilience when resilience was never a choice. But often that anger turns inward. Instead of saying,
I was emotionally deprived. They say something is wrong with me. And so the war continues quietly inside them.
Most people do not suddenly realize they were emotionally neglected. The truth usually appears slowly, through burnout, through painful relationships, through therapy, through exhaustion from always being strong. Eventually, a different possibility begins to emerge. Maybe the pain was real. Maybe the loneliness was not imagined. Maybe these behaviors were survival patterns, not personality flaws. This realization can feel heartbreaking because it forces a person to revisit childhood with new eyes, to see how young they truly were, how normal their needs actually were, how often they blamed themselves simply because they had no other explanation. But naming the wound changes something. The confusion begins to loosen. Hyper-independence becomes understandable. People-pleasing becomes understandable. Emotional numbness becomes understandable. The person stops asking, "What is wrong with me?" and begins asking, "What happened to me when love should have been there?" That question becomes the beginning of healing.
Healing from emotional neglect is rarely dramatic. It happens quietly, in learning that needs are not shameful, that rest is not laziness, that boundaries are not rejection, that love does not always require performance. At first, this new emotional language feels unnatural. The body still braces for disappointment. Old habits still appear automatically. But healing slowly changes the relationship a person has with themselves. Instead of attacking their survival patterns, they begin to understand them with compassion. The people pleaser once protected connection. The perfectionist once tried to secure love. The emotionally detached self once prevented further pain. These behaviors were not failures. They were survival. And slowly, with enough safety and self-awareness, something changes. A person begins to stop abandoning themselves. They become more honest about their emotions.
There is deep grief in realizing how much life was shaped by emotional absence. Not only grief for what happened, but grief for what never happened. The comfort that never came. The warmth that never arrived. The version of yourself that may have existed if love had felt safe from the beginning. But even here, something remarkable remains. Many unloved children still grow into deeply compassionate adults. They notice loneliness in others. They understand silence. They recognize emotional pain hidden beneath ordinary behavior. Their suffering often leaves behind sensitivity instead of cruelty. And perhaps that is the most human thing of all. That even after growing up emotionally unseen, the heart still searches for connection, still hopes for tenderness, still believes somewhere, somehow, that warmth exists. The child who was never fully held may still live inside the adult, but that child is no longer invisible. The silence has finally been broken. The wound has finally been named. And sometimes naming the pain is the first moment the healing truly begins. If this video resonated with you, I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Share your experience or reflection in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. If you know someone who's been quietly carrying this kind of weight, consider sharing this video with them. It might give them the words they've been searching for. And if you're not ready to leave just yet, there are more videos on this channel that go deeper into healing, self-understanding, and emotional growth. Take a moment to watch the next one. It might be exactly what you need right now.